Alright, welcome to the video today. We've got a bunch of stuff cooking on the screen. I'm going to just play some of this and we'll talk about it after you listen to it. And so I'm going to hit my keyboard. I've got a bunch of keys set up, so let's go. Alright, so what was all of that? Let's just break it down and show you what I've been up to here today. We've got a whole bunch of stuff on the screen right now. Basically, this is what I did for today's little experiments. We've got in the green here, these 4 tracks. That's 4 ReMidi 2s. The new interface, easier to use. Below that we have the purple, 4 tracks of Scalar 2.3, which by the way is just getting so much more powerful with every new version, and we'll talk about that. And then over here, these 4 tracks in the orange are the Orchestra Complete 2. Alright, so what I have been doing is I've got these 4 tracks, ReMidi tracks, and if we go to the first one, I've titled them all appropriately so you don't get mixed up, right? So if you're going to try something like this, I would say an important feature would be to title them correctly or all in the same way so that you don't get mixed up. So I know I want a track controlled by ReMidi, so I want to be able to bring in all kinds of bass ideas, so I called it ReMidi bass, and that's right there. And then the same with staccato, so I've got my ReMidi staccato, and that's right there. And that will be any staccato type ideas for staccato strings and short notes, that type of thing. And below that I have some ideas for sustains. So I've got a ReMidi for that, and that's set up for longer notes and shorter or slower tempo, so I can bring in some sustain ideas into from all these ideas, right? And then the fourth one, which I haven't even gotten set up yet, which would be a percussion ReMidi, and that is going to be set up just to bring in some hits and some percussion later if that's something I want to do. So that's the first part of this. So I've got a lot to play with here. I can set up full ReMidi with all kinds of bass ideas, staccato ideas, choppy short notes for strings and whatnot. I can bring in some longer sustains using all kinds of instruments with a longer sustain, so I'll set up my ReMidi that way, and of course the percussion, which we just mentioned. Alright, so then after that, in the purple, I've got all my scalars set up and named the same way. So now I've got my scalar bass, and I've got scalar staccato, and sustains, and percussion. All right, so with the first one, well, all of them basically I have the internal sounds turned off, and that goes the same with ReMidi. I got the internal sounds turned off by default. And for the bass, I simply got them all set up with keys locked. So right now, all I'm using Scalar for is to set a key, in this case F. So all my scalars are in the key of F. And that's all I'm using them for right now. But of course they can be used for so much more, and we'll get into that. And then I've got all my, the orchestra, the bass, and I've got the staccato and the sustains and the percussion. So that's what you've been listening to. Now if we just go and solo the bass, and I think I can solo it that way. Now when I say bass, there's a lot more to it than just bass. So let's look at what I've got. Now each orchestra, you can have 5 different instruments just for bass, right? So when I say bass, that's multiple instruments making up a full bass sound. And the same goes for staccato. I've got all kinds of, if we go to the main here, we can see violins, viola, and I have 2 open that I can add, and that's high string staccatos, and I can add more to that. And for sustain, same thing, bunch of different items in here giving me kind of a sustain sound. I've got that turned down a bit. So I've got a lot to work with, and we won't, like I said, won't even get into percussion yet. But so that's what I'm working with here. So it's all in the key of F, and I can choose the key of every instrument group separately, because I've got scalars for that, and I can add performances on top of everything, and chords. So everyone's on a separate track to give you multiple ways of working with each item. So you can, set up scalars to give you performances now in bass. You can set it to give you bass notes. So you could drive the orchestra with the Scalar's new bass. If we click it on here, got all kinds of bass ideas. And melody, and a bunch of new items. And there's a lot going on in Scalar now, and that deserves its own video. But right now I'm not using any performances in that. And we've just been listening to musical ideas sketched in using ReMidi. So I started with the bass. Now let's see how I went about this. When using ReMidi for bass, or ReMidi, I guess that's how the producers of it pronounce it, so I guess that's the right way to pronounce it, ReMidi. But you can also think of it, in my mind, I think of it as remixing MIDI, so that's why I always call it ReMidi. To me, it's just natural ways, like you're remixing MIDI all the time. So for the bass, and if I hit my keyboard, which I have my keyboard set up to, every time I hit a key stroke, it will give me a different musical idea, and since I have bass solo just in bass. And again, since the velocity is part of it, if I hit it light, I get a different reaction from my instruments. So you even have control, again, with your velocity. So what a great way to come up with just bass ideas. I mean, literally, I've said this many times, but you could spend days just coming up with different ideas. Now this, again, just to show how much you have to play with here, and you can see it better in the new interface. This is just one song. I've been basically just testing the new interface and the new Scalar with just a couple songs here. But again, you got to think of how much is available here on your hard drive. You can, I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, But you can bring in any MIDI from your hard drive. It doesn't have to be from the factory MIDI in ReMidi or ReMidi. So, but you have endless amounts here. This is just the first folder in Baroque. And if I go up, back, classical, double click on that, and you have so many in classical. And again, each one has multiple layers. And the one I'm working on now has 2 layers, or 2 tracks. So you have upper, higher notes and lower notes, which you can manipulate and change. And for the bass, I have them both on for the bass now, but you could just use, higher or lower notes. So you have so much to work from. So let's go back to where we were, and we were on this one here. And so when you have it in edit mode, as I stated yesterday, it will split up this song, MIDI, all across your keyboard. So if your keyboard, I've got, like I said, 72 or 76 keys on here. If, it just spreads it all across your keyboard. So I have all these different pads, so to speak, and each time I press a pad, I get a different musical bass idea. So just from doing that one thing, setting up this one track, you just have endless amounts of bass ideas, and at any time I can switch out from the multitude of ideas inside of this one instance of the orchestra. So, I mean, it doesn't, even just mixing what I have in here, if I was to mix some of these sounds, and pan them around a little bit. Bass usually you want in the middle, but I could just give it a little wider sound just by just panning things around a little bit more, give it a little bit more space. So, you can understand why one could get excited about all the musical possibilities. Alright, so how does one set up ReMidi to work best for bass? Because if you don't have your ReMidi set up nicely, it can be somewhat of a not good experience. So let's just, right now, usually I turn the size of my slices down for bass to 1 or 2 at the most. Sometimes I'll shift one against the other. I may have 2 instances of bass, and I might shift them slightly to get a bit of a push and pull from the 2 different tracks working together. And I'll usually turn the tempo to half because I want my bass kind of slower. And you may want to turn your transpose down by -12, depending on what notes you want your orchestra to pick up. If it's missing the range, you can adjust and transpose. And you can also, if you're not getting the right instrument, the contra bassoon isn't picking up enough of the notes, you can change it here by transposing one of your bass tracks, or you can also go to the main here and you can transpose, say, the contra bass or double bass, whatever you need. It's on top here. I could, in the middle here, right here, if I click and drag, I can lower that or take that up by transposing that too. So there's multiple ways you can get the keys or the MIDI that's playing here to actually activate your instruments the way you want. And if that wasn't enough control, like I say, I'll usually have a scaler on that same track. So if I go to my scalar bass track, you can also use things like voice groupings to have the notes be grouped closer or higher octaves down. There's multiple ways to get the generated MIDI into the position where your orchestra can pick up the notes. So that hasn't been an issue or a problem for me. Alright, so let's turn that off for now. And like I said, we're only using scalar now to have everything in the key of F. If for some reason I wanted to change my song now to from... Now you can see natively it's in F. As I stated yesterday, now our song information, we see what key it's in and the time signature. So I just kept it in F. But say now we wanted maybe a darker, we're getting into a moodier, darker song we want to create or ideas. We could change this. So we could change it to, I usually like going to a D harmonic minor when I start getting moody. And we can try that, right? And so you would just switch that to everyone. You'd go D and go harmonic minor scale. Now this will apply to all the tracks that are going through into scalar. So now effectively I'm changing my song from an F to a D harmonic minor. So let's change this. And the last one. Harmonic minor. And I guess I can just drag these off for now. Just wanted to show you what I was doing. So for the bass, we'll keep the bass ones up here. Now it should be in D harmonic minor. Now let's just test that. So I'm going to change, while I'm playing, I'm going to change. So you've seen when I clicked it in and activated it, you could tell it went from D harmonic minor to E major. Now I'll just go back. And remember, you have to activate it down here. So if you change it up here, you change these two up here, you have to remember to click it on and activate it down there. So I just want to make sure I do that to all my tracks, and I've forgotten to do that on the other ones too. So just make sure to click it in over here. It's kind of a gotcha if you forget to do that. All right, so now we're in D harmonic minor in our bass. Now let's add some staccatos in here. So we're going to solo the staccatos, and they should also be in D minor. And let's turn on some of the sustains. Now, I'm not really liking that for this, so we could go back to the F, or we could try something else. We could go, instead of the F, we could go with a C minor. Not sure C minor would be great, but the good thing about it is you can try anything you like. So let's go, well, let's just try C major because it's kind of an upbeat type of thing. So. And we click it in, activate it. So that's their bass. And staccato, we'll do the same thing. C and major, click it in. And the sustain over here on the other monitor, changing to C major. Now there's, you you can experiment. There's nothing says in stone that you have to have, everyone's got to be in the same key. You may want some parts in different keys, and sometimes that gives you a very interesting composition, experimental compositions, where your staccatos may be in a different key or a different scale, which can add a lot to the interest of what you're working on. The more rules you break, the more interesting compositions and ideas you're going to come up with. So now we're back into we're into C major. And you immediately can feel it's more of a lighter, happier. I just had to turn on the sustains, kick it in. And one thing, when you have your ReMidi going through a scaler, in this case the bass, it's nice because you can see what's visualized here in a graphic form. You can see that it's played on the piano form up here. So you're getting the graphical representation and it played on the keyboard over here. And there's so many things you can also do to change that by voice grouping. You can humanize it, and they have some great new humanizing additions, quantizing and swing, some really great additions. But that deserves its own video. So yeah, you don't have to just stick with one thing. So what if it's not bassy enough? So you could go down here to pick up more bass notes. You could try just click down here. Now we have a lot more bass going on. And if you don't like all the brass in there, just mute out some of the brass. And say you want, you've got too many bass notes in there and you want to thin it out a little bit. You could excuse me, my voice, I've been dealing with that the last couple days, but it seems to be at least hanging in there. So you could add a lot more notes. So now you're going to see a lot more bass action here. Let's just turn these back on. And if we turn up the tempo of the bass, so of course that's way too much bass happening here, so that's why I usually turn it down by half. And if you want less notes, you just fiddle with the size, and you can also go to the filter and turn off all the upper notes, right? So now it's going to be a lot less bass, and I'll turn that back on to get some of the bass. So you're getting all kinds of great ideas simply by pushing these keys down and trying out all kinds of things. And so that's just kind of a look at the bass track and how you might set that up. You want to have it so that your size is small enough that you control your bass, the tempo is right, and you can shift it up and down according if you want to kind of push and pull it against another track. And you can set your transpose. And even with one orchestra on the bass, you have so many different ways of customizing your bass sounds. Your velocity will kick in higher or lower parts of the sound from your instruments, from the samples. And you control the key and the scale all with a scaler. And you could add as many tracks as you want. You could have 10 tracks of ReMidi. And then a great part of this is that was all from just one ReMidi. So even if we just go now, we're in edit mode. So the wrench is on, which means I can just click to the next one. Next one has been loaded. Now, even though our other ReMidis are, let's see, where are they now? They're all, this song, number 12 here, what I just loaded, happens to be an F. But say I go and load up 13 is also an F. Let's load up something in a different key. I don't know, these are all maybe an F. Okay, here's a song in G, right, which I've just loaded up. Now, so this new instance of ReMidi, oh, they're all below each other. So this is in G, but the others are still in F. But that's okay because they're all going to go through, they're all going through scalar, which is making sure they're all in C major. So it doesn't matter now if I load up something that is in the key of G, it should still work with the other ReMidis. Get some more bass. And you notice it retained all my bass settings here. Even though I switched and changed, I could go through 50 different songs to get ideas, and these settings will all stay the same for my bass. And something I didn't show yesterday was it's so easy now to get just chords. It's easier than in this interface than the last one. You simply turn on freeze. So I'll go to, and I'll turn on just to show you. So these are both on. Okay, I want to get a slice which shows has multiple notes. Well, even with these two notes, you can see that it'll be a two-note chord. All I do is hit the freeze, and it will, the first chord, whatever the first note is, it will freeze it and make it into one. So I need to, there, this is a good example. So there's three notes, and this just happens to be a chord on these bars here. But it will take whatever's first and drag it out as a solid chord. So whenever you turn on freeze, since this is a solid chord now, freeze didn't change anything, it stayed solid chord. But trying to find a bass. Let me just grab a different song. Okay, this will be a better example. Say I just wanted chords for my bass, right? I don't want to have multiple notes. I just want a chord-based bass. So whatever is first will be frozen, so that will turn into one. But if you have multiple at the beginning, like this will drag it out to 3 lines here when I freeze it. See? So it just drags whatever's first and drags it out as a chord. So the first notes of whatever slice will be dragged out to create a chord for your bass. And so with freeze on, now my bass will be all chordal, chord-based. So that's another thing you can do with, and if I add more size here. So I just wanted to show you that if you want to pick out the chords of your song, that's a great way to do it. You just freeze all the first slices. And a great way to just pull that out now would be just drag it up to a track. You can use this little icon to drag it up, or when you go out of edit mode back into global, you get this option to drag out separate slices or combine. So you could drag out all the chords for every slice. You know, if you're going to make a song out of this, I would have one track where I drag out all the chords onto one track. Then I would drag out all the regular MIDI. So I would drag out all the chords, a bunch of ideas for chords. Then I would go back into edit mode. I would turn off freeze, and then I would also drag out all separate, all the MIDI separately, and get. So you're able to use all the information for your ideas, right? So now we're kind of back to where we were here, except that's way too many notes for the bass. So I'm going to filter out the top and just leave the bass notes. Too many notes coming in. That doesn't seem to be matching up. I got it through scalar, bass. That's in the key of G. That doesn't sound too bad. What am I missing here? Well, let's go and turn it to G major, kick it in, and set the rest to G major. Not sure why to my ears that's not sounding right. Could be missing something here. G major. So we're setting up our scalars for the new song in the new scale of G major. All right, so everything's in G major turned on. And let's see what it sounds like now. That's better. Yeah, for some reason that G wasn't turning into a C major. That's nice. I try to trust my ears. Sometimes the technology, you can miss one setting and something's off. Something seems off. Alright, let's try a different one here. So we're in edit mode, we can just click in a new one. This is F. Let's see how that kicks in. So this F should be changed to a G major. That's nice. So even here, just these two keys, going back and forth with these two keys is a really nice musical idea. Really nice little musical idea right there. So let's try a few other keys. I like that. So there you go. That's it for today's video. You could, I think, quite easily come up with, hundreds of other ideas if once you work on the bass and get some great ideas going there. You could just switch it up and start to work on your staccatos. This whole time the staccato's been on this one song, but you could easily change this up and change the transpose and change the sounds and stuff. So again, it's just a really flexible way to come up with musical ideas. Really like the way the updates have improved the workflow to be able to visualize things better. And of course, Scalar 2.3 is at a point now with the performances, which have also added bass, as I've mentioned, melody, all these different versions of the melodies, which you can have all the parts, each part separately. Another great addition is in I think it's Edit, where now you have groups. So for playback performances, when you have say we just quickly go into the main here and pick some chords, go back to the edit. I should drag them down first. You can just rubber band them and drag them into your action spot there, then go to edit, and now you have global. And I watched the online demonstration David was doing. Really sounded great the way he was doing it, and you can simply add groups, and when you say you keep it all in group 1, and you can switch the way it evolves into the second chord, how this performance will carry over to this to the chord change without changing the performance. And I thought that was really great. And so hopefully in the next video I'll go into some detail and explain why this is so much musically enhanced now with these new features. The melodies, the bass, and the humanize with you can get into quantizing and triplets and swing. Again, a free update, so what can you say? You have to applaud the companies that are choosing to treat their users not only with really fair pricing, but free updates and substantial updates. So totally support these companies and what they're doing. Thanks for watching the video today. Have a great day or evening wherever you're at, and we'll catch you in the next video.